So I went back to this picture here for a particular reason. And here's the reason. It is group play. You see in this picture here that the original concept of basic Dungeons and Dragons was such that you played as part of a group. You went in as part of a team on a dungeon exploration where your goal was not to make levels and not to make a name for yourself, but as a group to survive the grueling exploits within that dungeon or within that adventure. BX, the basic book being about dungeon delving, the expert adding the wilderness exploration side. But you went in together as a team to survive that so you could come out with treasure, amass that treasure, and eventually would lead to building yourself a keep for your group and those types of things. Not just making something particularly cool happen only just for you. So I think the way I'm going to start this is I'm going to start off talking about what Moldvay actually talks about in his particular book, which in this case is, as we are still covering, BX. And in particular, we're going to be focusing on a particular page in the basic book, which is going to be page B19 if you are following along, page B19. So take out your copy. If you don't have one, get one at DriveThruRPG. You can find the link to that in my last video. As always, anything I put in the link or anything I say in here will always be G-rated, so you don't have to concern yourself with language or anything like that. I don't believe that that's necessary to make some good points and to make some good videos about the game that we love, which is basic Dungeons & Dragons. So I will read from you here a little bit of page B19, and I won't be reading the entire page. But I want to show you here what Moldvay has to say. He says, when the players have rolled up their characters and brought their equipment, or bought their equipment, the DM will describe the background of the adventure. This might include information about the place the characters start from, the names of any NPC companions or retainers they will have, and some rumors about the dungeon the party is going to explore. It's not wise to adventure alone, for the monsters which may be encountered are numerous. It's much safer to go adventuring with a group of people who can help and protect each other. The best size for an adventure party is 6 to 8 characters, enough to handle the challenges which will be faced, but not too many to become disorganized or to ruin chances to surprise the monsters. It is smart for an adventuring party to contain a variety of character classes to gain the benefits of different class abilities. Now, I want you to notice that he says there's something very specific. First of all, you're getting together as a group of people, and you're helping each other, you're protecting each other. And then he says, but not too many together, so you won't be able to ruin your chances of surprising the monsters. But then he says this, it is smart for an adventure party to contain a variety of character classes to gain the benefits of different class abilities. Now, I don't know about you, and this may not be the experience for your game, and if it's not, that's great. If BX or OSR is not your thing, that's fine too. We want you to play Dungeons & Dragons and enjoy it, and however you play that and enjoy that is perfectly fine. If you don't play Dungeons & Dragons, you play Pathfinder 2e or something like that, and that's what you enjoy playing, that's fine too. These are just my own personal opinions and observations as we go through BX together. But he sets a precedent when he says what he says. Basically what he's saying is variation in the party is just not for sake of wild variation, but it's for utility. Because he said it's unwise to be alone. The lethality of what you're doing, the idea that you could go in and die at any moment, is stressed in the way he's saying this. And I think without that lethality, you'll lose some of the important tension and some of the important stress that's needed to tell a great story of overcoming great obstacles. Now, in the old days, back 40 plus years ago, as I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons, we didn't always adventure just with the Dungeon Master and a group of 6 to 8 players. Sometimes it was a Dungeon Master and ourselves, but typically most of our games were predominantly with groups of people. Those were the ones that always worked out the best. And so there were no lone wolves in those groups of people. Everybody varied their characters and worked together. Well, I had an old schooler here a while back tell me that when we were getting ready to get into an old school roll D20 game online, he said, you know, the DM keeps asking us what we're going to play, and I keep telling him the same thing over and over. What does the party need to be successful? And I think that was a great sentiment, and I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And also the lethality when we played back in the day was for a specific purpose as well, because we didn't take the word hero lightly. It was very, very important. And I want to share with you something that Dungeon Master, the Professor Dungeon Master on his YouTube channel has to say about this particular thing, and where kind of maybe Dungeons and Dragons is going in its future, of the fact that that lethality is gone, that intentionality, and that it just brought into the system is variation just for variation's sake. It's brought in just so that you can be a great lone wolf and you don't really need anyone else. He says this, when he says this in his video, and when he's quoting others as saying that, he says he believes we're moving to a singularity in Dungeons and Dragons where every character is the same. A furry, battle-ready spellcaster that can do almost anything and everything, that has little or no flavor beyond the 8-page backstory that the player might have brought with them. And he also says, today, people come to the game and they play their character as an idealized expression of themselves. It's a furry superhero version of you, living in a world where no one really dies. And in OSR, and back when I first started playing back in 1980-81, when you leveled up in an OSR game, as he says, you earned it. It really mattered. You overcame great odds and great obstacles, and the dice fell in your favor so that you could survive that situation, and you did it all as a group. And he's hitting on the reasons behind my videos here perfectly. And I'm talking about really saving our game of Dungeons and Dragons. And then to save it, I really believe that we needed to go back and start from the beginning. He says that us grognards, I would say, or us old schoolers, are really truly responsible to take it upon ourselves to teach this next generation what I believe is maybe what D&D should be again. So this is what we're talking about as we open up this page here in Moldve, because this is really what he's talking about what is valuable here is variety, but not just for variety's sake. It's so that there can be a group of people so that all of the characters can express their unique and different abilities for the good of the group in general. And also I will say this, it was, as he says, to help and to protect one another. Being a hero is more than just going in and slaying all the monsters, or being a murder hobo, as they call it today, and just running in and getting all the treasure and running out. It was also, as you're going through and overcoming obstacles, you're helping each other to accomplish that. And that's what hero really means. I think we've kind of made that word so watered down today that we're not sure what we know what that means anymore, and the new systems kind of reflect that. He also says that variety here is not only in size of party, but it's in character class, like I said, to gain the benefits of the different classes. A lot of times in our games, as I said before, we picked a character and played a character class based upon what the group needed. It was the good of the group. It was really valuable. It was fun to do this. And actually, that did make you significant. You didn't need the system to make you significant. Your choice of where you fit in the group actually made you unique and of benefit to the group. It made you significant in that way. And then, of course, how you envisioned how you played that character, and then how you actually role-played it throughout, that was the variation. And from my personal opinion, I just wonder if today's systems kind of strike you as more geared towards it's me, myself, and I, and not a group. So do your games seem that way to you? Do you have ways in which you can turn that around? So let's go back to page B19, and I want to continue on a little bit longer. Here's what he says here. He says, magic users are good thinkers, for example. Fighters are best for fighting. Clerics are able to fight, but they also have several spells that might cure wounds and aid in fighting. Elves, dwarves, and halflings all have special powers which can prove helpful to have along as well. Most DMs only allow one character at a time. Sometimes a person may play more than one character at a time, such as when only a few persons are playing. The player and the DM should try to keep any characters played by one person from becoming too close, passing magical treasures between themselves, borrowing money from each other, and so forth. There's no reason for characters run by the same player to be any more friendly with each other than the characters run by different players. Again, even if you were playing by yourself and you had multiple characters, you were supposed to play those individual characters as unique individuals. They weren't all the same person. So that's lost in some translations, or in some editions today in translation, in that you are just playing for yourself. You're playing an idealized version of yourself, and so all of your characters end up being exactly the same way. So they swap all their resources, they do all of the exact same things. I could go on and on about that. But then he talks about something here else I want to touch on too. He talks about this under organizing a party. He says, before entering a dungeon, the players should arrange their characters in a marching order. A marching order is the order of position in which the characters in a party explore a dungeon, who's scouting in front, searching in the middle, and guarding the rear. I think this particular section here touches on something that I want to cover too, which is, you and the DM are working together to tell a story. Adversarial DMs and all that other posting and all that nonsense out there. Mulvey clearly before in my last video has specifically said, don't do that. Don't be like that. You're telling a story together. So I think that's just shame on them if they're doing that kind of a nonsense. But you're supposed to be working together to tell the story. And this is one thing where he mentions that it's a big DM help. And here's the help, as I just repeated, it's marching order. So when you're going on your adventure together, it's nice for the dungeon master to have that taken care of, that he knows where you are as he's describing things, as you're moving in that different marching order to like who's opening the door, who's searching the room, who's fighting in combat, and so forth. And then he talks about how that might happen in a corridor. He talks about those in front might be the ones in better armor, while magic users and the thieves might be in the middle somewhere, or maybe even in the back. So I think that's incredibly important, that he's just talking about how the DM and the players are supposed to be a seamless group of people that are working together as a party to tell this story, if you will. Then he mentions something else that we never did, but he mentions in here, and actually there are some play examples in here where he shows this, which is the caller. It says one player should be chosen to tell the DM about the plans and actions of the party. This player is the caller. The players may tell the DM what their characters are doing, but the game runs more smoothly when the caller relays the information. Now, we never used this. However, I've been to a few Gen Cons and other more local conventions over my lifetime in Missouri and different places when I lived there, and I can assure you that a room full of gamers and a convention room of activities going on, it was nice to know that you had one person right up there beside the Dungeon Master. You could relay things to them, and you could see the relief on the Dungeon Master's face when only one person was talking instead of 10 or 12. So I could see the value in this. And he does it in here in his examples in the basic book, but we never played that way. Then he talks about something else that we uniquely did do, which is very interesting. He talks about mapping. He says one player should draw a map of the dungeon as it's explored. This player is called a mapper. Normal movement would include the time spent exploring, measuring, and mapping the dungeon. Maps are drawn to help players visualize the area their characters are exploring and to provide a record of sections of a dungeon they've already explored. A good mapper should listen closely to the DM in order to draw a good representation of the dungeon. It is most important to record proper directions, shapes, and approximate size, rather than spending a lot of time determining exact measurements and filling in minute details. It's also a good idea to make brief notes about where traps, monsters, and unusual features are encountered. A map should be simple and easy to read. Now, I remember back in our days, I typically got relegated to the mapping position. I got to where I started out hating it, I got to where I kind of loved it. Again, a unique role in the party. And the Dungeon Master would explain so that I could map along. He never came over and fixed my map. He always let me make a map, and we would use that map as we went along. And if it was right, it was right. If it was wrong in spots, it was wrong in spots. And that inspired even more unique play. I do think today's digital mappings and stuff like that are super cool technology. I use those sometime when I run my family as well, but ultimately I think that there's a little bit lost there with those as well. I think Dungeon Fog again is a great idea, but again there are some things that are lost that it would be nice to teach the new players, hey, you can listen to the dungeon master and his descriptions and then put that down so that you can all as a party refer to it later. I think there's a quality of listening skills that maybe is lost in today's systems as well. And a lot more responsibility is placed on the dungeon master, which then involves players doing a lot of metagaming and a lot of out of character or out of immersion conversation just so they can get to those same ends. Whereas I think maybe a mapper, maybe even a caller, you could try it, but certainly a mapper or other things like that could keep you immersed, keep you involved, keep the exploration within character. And when mistakes happen, they're not mistakes, they're happy mistakes, they're fun mistakes to go fix and adventure through together as well. Then he talks about, like we've been talking about maps, he talks about figures. If miniature figures are used to represent the characters, the players should choose figures which look like their characters, should make sure that the DM knows which ones represent which characters. They should be lined up in the same order as the marching order. So I do notice today that I use miniatures a lot, and I know others who do. I do notice today that miniatures can also be a distraction as much as a help. We never used them back in the day. We used whatever we had, a dice or something to represent where we were just in general for the Dungeon Master to visualize that and for us to visualize that. But I see nothing wrong with miniatures. I just think, again, you can get caught up in the minutia of looking at a miniature and its placement and fiddling with it so bad that like you're trying to fit your jigsaw piece in the puzzle when it maybe doesn't even go there and you're out of character again, or you're trying to put yourself exactly at this particular facing in this particular square or hex at this particular distance. And there's a place for miniatures play, and then there's a Dungeons and Dragons basic and expert, and that was theater of the mind. And today's systems are in some ways maybe less theater of the mind and more measuring things out and facings on squares and all the rules that have to be stacked on to represent that. And I'm not sure that all of that is necessary to have just to tell a great story. But if that works for your game, that's great. Like I said, I use them sometimes too. I just emphasize that that's just a representation. Don't fuss about it. Don't make it a focus of your attention. The reason why I say these things, again, is I'm very much interested in making sure that our game can be saved from what I see might be happening in these new systems, such that it feels like to me that basic lets you actually get together as a group and actually overcome things, adventure, and become heroes in such a way that the other systems kind of don't. BX specifically is so rules light. It's not telling you everything you can and cannot do and directing you or dragging you around by your hands while you're using the character sheet. You're not playing your character sheet. In basic and expert, there isn't anything practically on your character sheet. You're just playing your character, and I think that's incredibly significant to be able to do. I don't know if I've touched on everything from this page, and I know I haven't. I don't know if I've read everything for you that you wanted me to read. I would encourage you to go and get your own PDF copy of Molday's Basic and read through it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's something we ought to get ourselves back to. If Basic and Expert Molday version is not your thing, do BECME. If BECME's not your thing, do the BECME collaboration, which was the D&D Rules Cyclopedia. Whatever it is that helps you get into Dungeons and Dragons and play in this particular way, I think is incredibly significant. And I will say this, D&D 5th edition has done one thing for me. It's gotten me back into the game after I had been away for several years, and it has got new players to come back into the Dungeons & Dragons system. I just hope that all of the OSR talking and videos that are out here, and they're becoming more and more popular, are going to push us back in the direction of rethinking what this game really was at its roots and where it is we're going to go in the future to maybe remove all of this I feel like unnecessary stuff that's being brought in by the other systems and taking away from the fact that you're playing this hero, not a superhero. You're just playing someone who's doing heroic things and maybe comes from a background of non-heroic person. maybe comes from a background of you don't have hardly anything on the sheet, and yet throughout that you still overcome all of these odds and become a great hero with a group of people together, all of you working together to have an adventure with the Dungeon Master and just have a great time playing basic Dungeons and Dragons. Hey, if you like these videos, thanks for listening. Please like, please subscribe. If you want to, I'll put a link as well to consider putting a tip if you like these in our PayPal tip jar. And help us out to make these videos, to help my family out during COVID time. I'd really appreciate that. Follow me on Twitter. I'll put a link there as well. I will put a link to Professor Dungeon Master's videos and, of course, to Bandit Keep's videos as well. And as always, I'll always put a tag on there and let you know if they're G-rated or not. Again, just thank you guys for listening so much. I just want to encourage you to keep checking out my channel, and I'll continue to improve this as I go along, as I continue to increase my learning skills as to how to do these videos on YouTube. And I hope you like them. I hope you enjoy them. I hope it's something that you're interested in, as I am, which is OSR or basic expert, in my case, Dungeons and Dragons. So I hope whatever you're doing to play Dungeons and Dragons, you're enjoying yourself. Thanks, and may all your rolls indeed be natural 20s. Take care.